We're going to continue talking about measurement. You need to make sure that you have your flip chart and your math notebook. So it should be labeled with your name and measurement. This needs to come back and forth every video and every classwork because we're going to need it. So your title, the part we did in class today, now I'm going to flip it up. Okay, so I'm over here going to make a chart that has 3 different sections. Okay, so I'm looking at what equals what in measurement because I have to know how to convert things. For example, how many inches are inside a mile. If I have 2 miles, how many inches or how many feet? I have to know how to convert that back and forth. So I'm going to say 1 foot. So I'm going to write down here below everything that's equal to 1 foot. That would be 12 inches. Okay, so I'm going to get one larger than a foot. That's 1 yard. What's equivalent to 1 yard? 1 yard is equal to 3 feet, which is also equal to 3 times 12 is 36 inches. Okay, I could abbreviate feet by putting FT. I could abbreviate inches by putting IN. So I have 1 foot, 1 yard. I'm going to go even larger, 1 mile. Okay, so what is equivalent to 1 mile? So I have yards, I have feet, and I have inches. This is the one that we use the most often, and this is the one that we should memorize. There is actually 5,280 feet in a mile. You just have to remember that. So how many yards are there? Is my number getting, there's 3 feet in a yard. So what do I have to do with these 2 numbers? Should it become a smaller number because there's a smaller amount of yards because they're longer, or should it be a larger number? It should be a smaller number. So I'm going to do 5,280 divided by 3, which gave us 1,760 yards. So we are just going to have to memorize these. So there's more inches inside of a foot. There's tons, so I have to get bigger. How many inches are inside of a foot? 12. So I'm going to do 5,280 times 12. Oops. 5. Might help if I turned it on. 5,280 times 12. I get 63,360. I'm really not going to have to use this very much, but let's write it on our notes just in case. Okay, so we're going to talk about an example or two of how to use these. Okay, so I'm going to go over here. I made a mistake the first time I was doing this video, so I had to cover up, so I had a blank page. So I'm actually cutting that off. You do not need to do that. All right, so let's give an example. If I have 3 feet and I want to know how many inches that is. So, first step. So, write smaller and larger. Okay, so which is smaller? A foot or an inch? A foot or an inch? An inch is much smaller and a foot is much larger. So, smaller and a foot is larger. I'm not worried about the number, I'm just worried about inch is a small measurement, foot is a larger measurement. 2. Decide, multiply, or divide. So I have to decide. Is this going to be a multiplication? Do I need to do 3 times the number to get to inches, or am I going to go 3 divided? If I have 3 feet, am I going to have more inches or less inches? More inches, so I'm going to multiply. So that means when I go from larger to smaller, so I go from a larger unit to a smaller unit, larger unit to a smaller unit, I'm actually going to multiply. Okay, so let's say, so now I'm going to do 3 times, find the conversion factor. So 3 times what? How many inches are inside of a foot? 12 inches are inside of a foot. Step 4, solve. 3 times 12 is 36, so here's my answer. Okay, let's try another problem. Let's try, let's try 18 feet equals how many yards? Let's try 18 feet equals how many yards? Okay, so 18 feet equal how many yards? So let's, step 1, write smaller and larger. Which one's smaller, a foot or a yard? A foot is smaller, a yard is longer. So this time I'm going from a smaller unit to a larger unit. I'm doing the opposite of what I did up here. So if this time I multiplied, what would it make sense that I would do this time if I'm doing the opposite? So this time I would divide. So let's write that up here. When I go from a smaller unit to a larger unit, I divide. Okay, so I'm writing it down. And what's my conversion factor? How many feet are inside of a yard? 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. So 18 divided by 3 is 6. So here's my answer. Okay, so we practice what it looks like when you multiply and when you divide. Okay, so here are my notes. Now I'm going to go to my notebook and let's practice a few problems. So let's practice if I had 9 feet equals how many yards? 9 feet equals how many yards? So step 1, write smaller and larger. Feet are smaller, yards are larger. Yards are longer. So this is a yardstick and a ruler. Rulers are smaller. So I decide, am I going to multiply or divide? S to L, divide. Step 3, find the conversion factor. I'm going to copy my 9. What's the conversion factor? How many feet are inside of a yard? I just did that over here. How many feet are inside of a yard? 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Okay, so let's try 2 miles equals how many feet? Step 1, write smaller and larger. A mile is much larger. A foot is much smaller. Decide, multiply, or divide. What do I do when I go from larger to smaller? Larger to smaller, I multiply. So I'm going to copy my 2. Now I have to find my conversion factor. How many feet are inside of a mile? So I have to come over here. How many feet are inside of a mile? 5,280 feet are in a mile. So I'm going to do 5,280. So you may use a calculator, but let's say it's homework and I don't have one. So I'm going to do 5,280 times 2. But I'm better at adding, so I'm going to add them together twice. 2, 4, 5. So my answer is 10,560. So I practiced those steps, so let's try 2 of them. I'm going to copy these 2 problems and then you are going to practice them. Copy these 2 problems and then you are going to practice them. "48 inches equals how many feet?" Oops, can't see that. 48 inches equals how many feet? 15 yards equals how many feet? So pause the video, you do those 2 steps, and let's see what you get. Alright, so let's check your work. Did you put smaller and larger? Did you figure out from your notes that smaller to larger means divide? So did you say 48 And did you figure out how many inches are inside of a foot? Solve your problem and your answer should be 4. So what am I going to do over here? A yard is longer, a foot is smaller. Larger to smaller means multiply. Oh my goodness. What just happened? For some reason, my phone is purple now. Maybe that won't show up in the video. So let's try it. Oh, it's getting worse. I'm not sure how to fix that. I'm going to keep moving. Larger to smaller means multiply. How many feet are inside of a yard? 3. Your final answer is 45. So we were going to practice one more type of example, but we're going to have to wait and do that tomorrow since I'm having technical difficulties with my phone here. So we'll talk about, I'll look at these examples and tomorrow we'll practice some more.